So this is a review for I Wanna Play House, released in 1936. It's the 121st in the series, and it's directed by Freleng. A restoration is out there. At the time of this recording, it's not on physical media. Hopefully it will, because apparently it's had the opening and closing credits restored, although part of it looks kind of weird. I don't know if that was just a photoshopping issue or if the original negatives really did show the opening credits like that. If anyone has any further info on that, definitely let me know. Regardless, we're here for the cartoon. As long as we've got that restored, that's the main thing. But if it was done in error, hopefully it gets fixed in a physical media release. It's not on YouTube, as it is a copyrighted cartoon. Warner Brothers will just block this video if I try to show you the full thing. But in case you haven't seen this one, not really much to it. You've got two bear cubs, they're playing around, but they end up annoying the father. One sneaks off, ends up in a trailer, helps himself to food and some cider, which makes him drunk. The other one finds him and they fight and the trailer goes loose, and we have an action-packed third act, I guess. So yeah, this one is pretty riveting watching, but I definitely have a few observations in relation to that. Trivia-wise, there really isn't that much to say. My good friend Manny, who's the Toonie Tenor, he's going to discuss the music of this short very soon, and given that he only gave me a recording that was like 6 minutes long, just shows you how little there is to discuss about this one. But I'm here to discuss all 1,000 Looney Tunes, and this is one of them, so we definitely gotta do it no matter how in-depth these reviews are. But we're definitely at that transitional phase where the shorts are going more from the older ways, which started at the harmonizing studio with Bosco and the Merry Melodies, and Friz Freleng, who was actually at that studio, who came over to Leon Schlesinger's studio and became a director. He was definitely doing what he used to animate for Hugh Harman and Rudolph Ising. But around this time, Tex Avery comes along, and I've already done a few reviews on the channel regarding Tex Avery arriving, and what you'll find is that Freleng will slowly move away from the older style of what he was doing with the Merry Melodies, and then he would add some irreverent humor to these shorts. In fact, he's done it fairly recently in the Old King Cole short, where you have some characters, they're singing along, and Old King Cole wants nothing to do with it and ends up just shutting the blinds and just dismissing him entirely. So those kind of gags have started to seep in. This one doesn't really have much of that, but there's also the fact that with productions, these shorts are released out of order anyway, so this might have been in the works a little bit longer and released later. Now in 1936, you're going to see Friz Freleng's Merry Melody shorts definitely veer towards more when it comes to speed and having the Tex Avery influence, while moving away from the Disney influence. But what we'll do is we'll take a look at this short from start to finish. I'll note any observations I have and we'll go from there. So without further ado, let's get into it. So right away, we see the Papa Bears sleeping and two bear cubs are playing. It's nice animation, but this is definitely, by this point in time, old school even for then, if that makes sense. So this is the sort of thing you would normally see in maybe 1932, 33, thereabouts, in terms of design and the type of animation that it is. Is it bad? No, of course not. But when watching this short, you definitely don't think Looney Tunes, right? Or Merry Melodies in this case. It actually comes across almost as a Disney Silly Symphony short, just with maybe not as polished animation as what Disney were doing at the time. So it's interesting that they're animated as though they're dogs, sort of wagging their tails and sort of play attacking each other. I honestly don't know how bear cubs play in the wild, so if this looks accurate to you, definitely let me know, because we don't have bears where I live. We have koalas, but they're not bears, despite what some people may think. But anyway, I do like the animation, though, of the black bear just hitting the brown bear a lot harder, and of course makes the brown bear pissed off. But again, it's one of those things where it just shows your typical sibling thing, where one sibling may go too far at certain times and, makes the other one angry and so on. But we stop the fight for a moment, where we see the black bear noticing a turtle and does the whole gag about trying to have it eat its tail and ends up getting bitten by the turtle. And this gag was already done in a previous Merry Melody short, except it was a big bear instead of a small bear. There's nothing wrong with reusing gags and such, but it definitely came to mind when rewatching this one. But that turtle definitely feels proud of itself when biting that bear's nose, which, to be fair, that would hurt. I don't know if you've ever been bitten by a turtle before. I have. It's not exactly pleasant. So the black bear runs off crying, and again, fair enough, and goes to the brown bear. So the brown bear laughs at the black bear. Black bear's annoyed and ends up throwing a rock but hitting the dad. Now, according to Keith Scott's Cartoon Voices book, he actually does not have a listing as to who does the grunt when it comes to the Papa Bear. It'd be maybe a staff member or something, I don't know. But he does list Bernice Hansel as doing the voices of the smaller bears anyway, so at least we know that. And we see a scene which is not something we typically should be doing today, but you see one of the bears getting spanked. But this is your typical family thing, and I would imagine that someone would have had this issue where they would have a sibling, but for whatever reason, one of the siblings never seems to get into trouble, but the other one always seems to, even if they're completely innocent. I do like the thinking animation of the Papa Bear though, but seeing that brown bear getting spanked, yeah, it's a bit hard to watch. But let's move on to the next bit as the black bear thinks it's gotten away with what he actually did. Brown bear goes up, feeling sorry for himself, thinking, okay, I'm kind of sore, but the black bear says, let's you and me play hide and go seek. And the brown bear immediately is like, okay.
Let's you and I play hide and go seek. Okay. Now hide your eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
So there was no real resolution to what had happened. You'd think that the brown bear would be very annoyed with what happened, but I guess we've got to move the cartoon on somehow. But anyway, now we're going to play hide and seek. So we see that the black bear is now looking for a hiding spot and sees this trailer. As he goes down the tree, you see this animation of him just expanding, going down. And again, that's sort of a trait that you would see in a lot of the early 1930s shorts, where they were doing a lot of the animation to sound, and sound of film was very new at that time. So this feels like a holdover from that kind of period of animation, and you wouldn't see that kind of thing done too often after this. So the black bear enters the trailer. Now, one note about this restoration, it looks really good. Again, I don't know what's going on with the opening titles and the closing titles, no idea, but the cartoon itself looks really, really good, at least to my eye anyway. And again, hopefully when this comes to physical media, they can maybe tinker with it a little bit if there are any issues to address, but to my eye, it looks pretty good. Definitely better than the last time I saw this short, which was like an unrestored Laserdisc print. But we're seeing all sorts of food that just needs to be laying around. I don't know why it's around like this. You'd think the food would be put away if the people who are living in this trailer are out and about, but whatever, for the purposes of the story, we'll go with it. And we do a quick cut to the brown bear still counting in the 500s. I mean, isn't it customary to count up to like 20 or something? But anyway, so at least even at this point, while this short feels like a much older short done in the quote-unquote older way, there are still some really funny things that Friz Freleng does, like still having the other character just continue counting. But we're now at the table, and the brown bear certainly looks happy. I know I would be. That food looks really good. I mean, I don't know if I'd make a sandwich that big, but it still looks pretty good. I know that in a comic strip, there is a character named Dagwood, who was in the comic strip Blondie, and he would make sandwiches like this. In fact, there is a sandwich actually called the Dagwood Sandwiches, where it's an extremely tall sandwich. So I don't know if that's referencing that or not, but it definitely reminded me of that at the very least. But of course, we end up seeing our cider. I'm going to assume that the people living here, this may be set in Europe. I'm pretty sure there are black bears in Europe as far as I'm aware. I'm not sure, but this feels like it's set in Europe. I could be wrong. Apple cider is pretty common in a lot of European areas anyway, so that's probably what they're going for here. What you do need to know is that cider is typically an alcoholic drink. And I do like the added touch, though, when the bear does get that jug and ends up sniffing it, you see a little bit of effects animation, these little coloured lines floating around like it's an enhanced version of the smell. Freleng didn't have to do that, but I thought it was a nice little touch. But to show off that this bear is going to get drunk very quickly because cider can be pretty strong, I know that for a fact. But again, we see that wonderful effects animation enhancing the fact that, yes, this bear already has too much to drink, even though he hasn't drunk too much. And we cut back to the brown bear again. This is quite funny. Not the most cleverest thing in the world, but again, it's pretty funny. So we're now at 15,000. I mean, how long is this going to count for? And it's even sweating too. So now the black bear is drunk, and I gotta say, I do like the animation here of this bear being drunk, and we even get the warp effect where they would warp the cell and just shoot in that way. And they would have done that by hand, guys. You know, these days you can do that sort of effect on the computer, but no, they would have to manually warp the cell to give it that effect, like you're drunk or you're dizzy or whatever. But we finally see a resolution of all that counting where this brown bear is counted up to 1 million and looks really upset.
1 million, 1,000,001, 1,000,002.
To be fair, why didn't the brown bear just stop earlier? I would say the black bear is definitely innocent in this one, but in any case, the brown bear goes off to look for the black bear. Now we see a scene where this bear puts on a green fedora. And this scene definitely reminded me of the dancing scene from My Green Fedora. The animation's definitely not lifted from there, but it definitely reminded me of that. And again, the animation's really good here, depicting this drunk bear, but also even the vocal acting of Benny's Hansel here is pretty good too. I especially like, as this bear's singing along, how it just bounces along to the music. And again, it's very similar to the My Green Fedora animation where the rabbit is bouncing around to the song it's singing. And I even like when they cut close up to the black bear's face just singing along as well. So while this short definitely feels like a much older one by this point in time at least, Freleng is thinking about doing things differently when it comes to actual directing and staging and all that. Oh, and as the bear's bouncing around singing along, take a note of the hat. I just like the fact that the hat doesn't end up falling down. It just ends up bouncing up and down, so it's a nice little touch. But the brown bear easily finds a black bear. I mean, it's not really much of a hiding spot if you're pretty much doing loud, drunken singing, but the brown bear's not happy, and he sees its sibling just singing along drunkenly. But I have to admit that that scene definitely takes a little bit too long. I don't know if that was a contractual thing that they had to sing the whole song there. I don't know.
I'm gay.
The brown bear throws a tomato, rightfully so. That was pretty excruciating to listen to by the end of it. And the two bears get into a fight. And that's a great one to slow-mo because of how ridiculous it is. So they end up fighting along. And again, siblings will be siblings, but their fighting means that they end up knocking out the parking brake, and now the trailer has gone off. So what differs this one as well from a lot of the Merry Melodies is that you would typically have a villain in the third act, but in this case, there's really no villain. Now, this isn't the first time we see this sort of thing. I know this was done a lot in the harmonizing days where you would have like a three-dimensional type image. Like it might be a character in a car or in a runaway trolley or that sort of thing. So here we get the point of view of what the actual cubs are seeing. And I do like the effect here. I've always liked when shorts like this actually go the extra mile and actually attempt a shot like this, even if it's not perfect. Because again, there were no computers then, so this would have all been done by hand. Well, I guess the message there is that the two have to learn to work together in order to steer this trailer that's going around and around this particular mountain bend. But as it goes down the mountain, the trailer ends up being a little bit more comical, how it's able to extend up while going over a tree. So again, it's the kind of gag you would have seen in a lot of the older Merry Melody shorts. Again, ones that Friz would have actually just animated on, and the earlier ones he directed once he was actually in a studio. And again, in another sign of doing things the quote-unquote old-fashioned way, you even see that when the two bears try to think of a solution, you even see briefly those black lines, what I call the thinking lines above them, when they realize, okay, we need to put up that parking brake again, and hopefully that will stop the trailer. Now, sure, the parking brake ends up working, but as you'd expect, those wheels, which I'm assuming are wooden, they have now properties of a rubber tire, I guess, and end up just being shaved all the way right down to the rim. And I do like the timing when the actual trailer ends up hitting the tree and, well, ends up being completely destroyed. I do have to wonder, the people that were actually living there, I wonder what's going to happen there. They'll go back, try and find their trailer, and maybe they think, oh yeah, my trailer's supposed to be here, but it's not, and then they'll sort of second guess where they actually park the trailers. So yeah, given that at the time there was no GPS around, well, it's safe to say that they may be lost in the woods forever. But anyway, we see that the trailer's all now destroyed. But in a nice little twist, and I do like the fact that they're thinking about story a little bit more here, as opposed to the old Merry Melody short. It was the black bear that was inebriated and ended up essentially starting all this, but now the brown bear gets knocked out by the cider bottle, and even though he's just dizzy and out of it, they're going to now think that he's drunk. And of course, Papa Bear sees the cider next to him, and he's looking inebriated. I mean, of course he's going to draw that conclusion, right? And yes, he gets spanked again, which admittedly is harder to see, but we cut back to the black bear, who's seemingly going to get away with it once again. But now he gets knocked on the head with a rock. But does he get punished? Nah. So I guess the story department still has a little way to go, especially with these Freleng Merry Melodies. Now, I've been prattling on long enough, so my good friend Manny Cruz, the 2 tenor, is going to discuss the music in this short. And thankfully, it was a very short recording, because there really isn't that much to talk about in terms of music as well. But I'll let Manny explain why in just a moment, so take it away, Manny.
Hi everyone, this is Manny Cruz, the 2 tenor, coming at you with the latest edition of It's Time for Manny's Music Time with music trivia for you today. Bum! Oof, that ending was a little rough. I just sang 6 services in 2 days, so I'm not at my best vocally, but I'm here to talk about the 1936 Merry Melody, I Wanna Play House, directed by Isidore Friz Freleng, and musical direction by Bernard Brown. So there ain't much to talk about this one, so Anthony is cheering, he's crying his lungs out in joy because he won't have to do a lot of editing. So let's get into it, shall we? So obviously the cartoon starts with the Merry Melody's theme song, I Think You're Ducky, and it goes right into the song I Wanna Play House, the title track. Now, the title track has music written by Ali Rubel and the lyrics scored by Mort Dixon. If you want to know more about them, Mort Dixon, please check out the commentary I did for A Great Big Bunch of You. And for Ali Rubel, please check out the commentary I did for Pop Goes Your Heart. And this is a song you hear throughout the cartoon. You hear it in the opening titles. You hear it when the bears are teasing each other, the brown one in particular, the black bear. And later on in the cartoon, one of the bears sings it with alternate lyrics.
I gotta sing 'cause I'm gay. Gotta sing when I feel this way. To my song I'm gonna sway. I gotta sing 'cause I'm gay.
And also you hear it when everything goes crazy at the end, because it always happens in these Merry Melodies at this time period. They always do like a faster version of the title track when the danger's occurring, or hey guys, gotta wrap the plot up. So unfortunately, there is no commercial recording of this song. You're looking at it, or you're watching it, I should say. So there's nothing to source it on. And the other cue in this cartoon is called Outside of You. And this one has music by Harry Warren and lyrics by, say it with me, boys and girls, Al Dubin. As I've said in multiple commentaries, the Lennon and McCartney of the Warner Brothers music universe. Okay, if you want to learn more about Harry Warren, please check out A Great Big Bunch of You. And Al Dubin, the Earl. No, not Earl. He's not here. The girl at the ironing board. And this is the song that you hear when they start playing hide and seek. And then when you see the bear sliding down the tree. And you hear it also when the black bear gets inside the wagon. He starts making a sandwich. Nice looking sandwich, just get rid of the cheese and the olive and I'm set. Hold the onions to a little Friz Freleng gag, of course. This song comes from the 1935 film Broadway Gondolier. I was listening to to 2 recordings, but one in particular from Dick Powell, who was also in the film. And I was having trouble identifying this one because according to the cue sheet, I saw Outside of You. And I was listening to it in the cartoon and I'm like, it doesn't really quite sound like what I hear based off the Dick Powell recording. And the other one that I was listening to, which was by, I believe it's Geraldo and His Sweet Music, or Geraldo and His Orchestras. I sadly didn't do the research for this one. I was just listening to one of the recordings that I found on YouTube. So please don't shoot me for that one, or I guess spank me. That sounds very strange. Anthony, please don't keep that. And I know you're going to keep that in the commentary because the little bears get spanked. Yeah, this is going nowhere fast. But yeah, the second recording I listened to, not the Dick Powell one, that was the one where I was able to identify the melody better. Because in the cartoon, it's played a lot faster than the recordings. The melody's sung a lot slower and played a lot slower. So yeah, that's it. Probably this is the shortest Manny's music time I've ever recorded. I guess one other thing too is I like the little bounces, the boom, 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 or whatever the music was when the turtle was getting a little antagonistic with our bear friends. But yeah, and it's always nice during this time, Bernard Brown and Norman Spencer, their original compositions, once Carl Stalling comes later on in 1936, that's when he gets really reliant on cues, which me personally, I love it. I know some people are like, yeah, he could have done more of his own compositions, but it's still nice to hear the waning days of the Norman Spencer / Bernard Brown days. So thanks for listening. It's always a pleasure to come on, and Anthony's definitely going to have the pleasure of editing this very short Manny's Music Time, so you're welcome. Please follow me on social media at the Tuning Tenor, TheToonyTenor, for the updates of my life as a musician. Like I said, I sang 6 church services in 2 days, so I'm very tired, as well as my life as a multifaceted pop culture nerd or geek, whatever you want to call me. And keep supporting Anthony's channel, and thanks for helping us out and listening and supporting the work that he's been doing for these past few years, and I'm always honored to be part of it. So I'll talk to you soon. Go eat a sandwich. Make sure that your mobile home has like proper brakes and wheels. I don't know. And I don't know, stay away from bears. I live in New Jersey, and parts of the state I have bears in it. Fortunately, where I live, it's more like raccoons and possums and stray cats and dogs. Can't forget dogs. All right, folks. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Manny. There's really not much to say about this one. Again, I got to cover it because I'm covering every single one. Is this necessarily a bad short? Not really. But when you're watching these in order and you're seeing how the animation studio was evolving, this one definitely feels like the last short of its type before the Schlesinger studio becomes the studio that would put the Looney in Looney Tunes, because you're going to have the Tex Avery influence, and then soon you also have the Frank Tashlin influence. But you can see a few hints here and there of Freleng adding some more interesting humor in there, but it definitely has that vibe of early 30s Merry Melodies instead of the ones that will come after this. Freleng definitely gets a little better from this, but it looks good at least. The animation's fine for what it is. The timing's great, and I do like the music, but some of the scenes definitely go on a little bit too long. This one, look, it's 5 out of 10. It's fine. Not one I'd revisit often, but I am curious to see when it comes to physical media if they'll look into those opening and closing titles. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.